Hello, today we'll be talking about another common trope, the Overpowered Protagonist, or OPMC for short. If you're a fan of anime, you've probably already encountered one of these characters who wields unimaginable power and can effortlessly crush their foes or any other obstacles in their path. It's a trope that can spark strong feelings. Some love it for the sheer spectacle, while others find it undermines any tension or suspense in the story. But what can make this trope compelling, and why does it sometimes fall short? Let's discuss. Now, when we hear the words overpowered protagonist, we all probably have our own idea that comes to mind. For the purposes of our discussion here, we're going to define a overpowered protagonist as a character in a story who possesses exceptionally strong abilities, skills, or powers that far exceed those of other characters in the same setting, which can result in the protagonist overcoming any obstacles, challenges. We'll start from the top with Saitama, the protagonist of One Punch Man. A guy who is just a hero for fun, and a guy that has such unparalleled strength in his universe that he can beat any opponent in just one punch if he wants, which is a fact he's unhappy about. And this is part of the charm that makes Saitama's portrayal compelling. His story isn't about him winning battles, but rather it's about his search for meaning and challenge in a world that he's too powerful for. And to keep the narrative engaging and the audience invested, the author shifts the perspective and focus from Saitama onto other characters and heroes in the setting, letting us become acquainted with them and their struggles. Eminence in the Shadow takes a similar approach. It follows Sid Kagano, an isekai chunbyo who's trying to live out his fantasies in his new world, and who also happens to be atomic. He's obsessed with the idea of being one who controls things from the shadows, and so he tries to hide his true power behind a facade of mediocrity. The series balances Sid's overpowering strength with humor and intrigue about the new world he inhabits, often given to the audience through the lens of the world's other inhabitants, and it works well as the author has managed to create a world with a genuinely interesting history. And then there's Overlord, another isekai, this time featuring a player turned overlord who quickly becomes the dominant force in the new world he's transported to. As the series progresses, the focus lies more on the impacts of Ainz's actions and how he and his NPCs interact with the world's inhabitants. By doing so, and by letting us see events through the world's terrified inhabitants' eyes, the series manages to maintain its narrative tension and suspense, keeping the audience engaged and invested. And despite being a mentor rather than the protagonist, I'll also give Satoru Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen an honorable mention of being a good portrayal of an overpowered protagonist, due to his charisma and personality making him an interesting and entertaining character to be explored. He's essentially considered a pinnacle of power in the series, where they will use him for scale or for reference by having the narrator comment when someone makes a sweeping comment like, "No one has ever survived this attack," and then the narrator will chime in along the lines of, "No one except for Satoru Gojo." His presence or lack thereof causes a direct impact on the world around him, and the series does good to explore that. The common point in each of these examples is that despite being the strongest in their worlds and stories don't all revolve solely around them. They impact and shape the events at large whenever they get involved, but other people live in the world and have their own stories that are affected by the OPMC's actions. And we get to experience those effects with those characters. This gets the audience invested and supplies some suspense and narrative tension, such as if a character is put into an unwinnable situation, it adds suspense, making the audience wonder if the OPMC will arrive in time. Or what will happen if the OPMC does not arrive? If the authors of those series put all or most of their focus into just showing us their OPMCs going around and beating every opponent without a struggle, instead of doing their world building, giving their characters personalities, or fleshing out their characters, they wouldn't be good series. The best use of this trope is a supplementary one to enrich the storytelling and enable the exploration of different themes. But this trope can easily be a double-edged sword. When executed well, it can help craft an interesting narrative that the audience feels invested in, and when executed poorly, it can have the exact opposite effect. Such as if the author leans too heavily into making the character an invincible powerhouse and forgets to make them an actual character with a personality. Or if they play the situations they put the overpowered protagonist in too seriously, it can be detrimental to the work, because everyone knows how it's going to go and it'll just feel like a waste of time. Like if some everyday street thug just pulled a knife on Gojo and it was treated with an unwarranted level of seriousness for a prolonged period of time. That would be anything but engaging, because everyone knows there's no way it's going to touch him. There's no tension or stakes involved. And it warrants mentioning, any series that forgets to make their overpowered protagonists have a personality typically isn't going to be focusing on making sure the other characters have them either. They'll go the route of a pure power fantasy with all the side characters existing just to fawn over how amazing the MC is. Isn't that fun? My name is Verisai Militude, and thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on overpowered protagonists in anime or other media? Are there any series you know that handle an overpowered protagonist particularly well? Please share in the comments below.